Je voudrais maintenant inviter Mme Donna Achimov, la présidente-directrice générale du Bureau de la traduction, à vous adresser la parole. Mme Achimov will now speak to you.
Merci Anne. Bonjour tout le monde, bienvenue et j'apprécie beaucoup l'invitation. Michel Carrière a une bonne façon de commencer notre discussion ce matin. Aujourd'hui, je suis très contente d'être ici. La deuxième fois, je pense que c'est une bonne façon de peut-être parler à l'avenir. Et je sais que tout le monde ici est vraiment intéressé et préoccupé avec les tendances qu'on a juste entendu dire. Et je veux parler un peu au sujet de les tendances, la direction du Bureau de la traduction et le système peut-être où on peut, ou la façon où on peut travailler ensemble. Le thème aujourd'hui, c'est partenariat et collaboration. On a commencé un dialogue avec l'industrie il y a plusieurs années, mais l'année passée, on a ciblé nos commentaires et nos visions au bureau avec un grand webinaire avec l'industrie. On a entendu beaucoup des bonnes idées, des préoccupations et aussi des suggestions pour travailler mieux ensemble. Aujourd'hui, je veux parler un peu de nos processus de regarder comment est-ce qu'on va faire affaire avec l'industrie, avec les associations et avec les universités, et aussi comment est-ce qu'on peut travailler ensemble et embrasser les opportunités avec technologie. Government today. We know, we heard already, and each of us are living the realities of fiscal restraint. We know that the Government of Canada is looking at being very targeted, smaller, more efficient. Less money in budgets means fewer demands for services such as translation. We just heard about New Brunswick with 4 million words less being translated. At the Bureau, the demand for translation services has fallen, and in the past year, it's fallen by 10%, and we're seeing a steady decline. We expect this to continue to fall before it stabilizes. There are risks associated with that. One of the repercussions, for example, is we are doing very, very little English translation. Ça veut dire que les fonctionnaires ne travaillent pas ou écrivent pas dans leur langue maternelle français et malheureusement, c'est tellement difficile de visualiser une façon peut-être d'augmenter cette demande, mais nous sommes en train vraiment de sensibiliser la fonction publique. Je suis la championne des langues officielles au gouvernement du Canada et je pense que c'est mon rôle aussi comme la présidente-directrice générale du Bureau de la traduction de partager les renseignements comme ça. So I'm taking every opportunity to sensitize the public service. These drops in demands, yes, impact the business, but I think also are very early indicators of some tendencies that we want to make sure we look proactively as correcting. So the Bureau of Tomorrow. I know people worry when we say this. My internal staff worry, and I think that external viewers are saying, well, what does this mean, and is this opportunity? What this means is the Bureau is focusing on its core mandate. This is really an opportunity for all of us, not only in government, to do what we do best and to think about how we can partner and leverage the expertise that exists elsewhere. Our focus in the future will remain supporting Parliament with translation, revision and interpretation services, supporting the machinery of government, which includes the Prime Minister's office and the businesses related to the machinery of government, security and business continuity for the federal government. Maintaining the authority in terms of language, terminology, and standardization is core to our mandate and will continue to be a priority. And managing and promoting the language portal of Canada, again, will continue to be key for us in the future. We spent last year doing a lot of reflection, both inside the Bureau and looking at tendencies in government and internationally. On a fait une analyse de conformer certains faits de l'industrie langagière. We've published our benchmarking report, and I'm pleased to say that it's not only on our website, but AILIA has also put it on theirs, and we're looking at certain tendencies. We've heard and we know that the workforce is aging, and we need to look at la relève, and we know that the industry is fragmented. Anne has done a lot of work in terms of flagging to us some of those tendencies, and I know that all of you here are looking at opportunities to address how we can perhaps defragment or put together opportunities for us to work closer and remove some of those challenges. We're seeing the downward pressure in terms of prices. There isn't an event that I go to that people ask or challenge and basically wonder about where the prices in translation are going. And we see that this is hugely competitive, not just in Canada, but we're also seeing the globalization and the emergence of technologies and countries where translation is becoming a commodity of the lowest cost per word. Africa, in terms of French translation, China, India, are all offering linguistic services and are becoming very, very competitive. The pressure to be faster, real-time communication, the new technologies, speed of technological change, shrinking turnaround times, real-time, social media. We're starting to see more and more demands from our clients in terms of supporting them in terms of social media, but also incredibly tight deadlines. We've often said that the pressure is lack of planning. Some of that is lack of coordination, but the reality is the demands are getting more and more intense, and I see that every day in terms of the work that my employees are doing. And I also hear it from some of you who are saying the deadlines that you're putting out in terms of our contracts are just ridiculous. They don't make sense. However, that's part of the reality of the world that we're working in. I mentioned globalization. I think with some of the threats, there are also certain opportunities. We are seeing that the Government of Canada has entered into 50-plus treaties and trade agreements internationally, and that will hopefully bring some new awareness and some new business opportunities in terms of multilingual service. I mentioned new modes of communication, and I just wanted to give you a little bit of an example in terms of the types of diversification of content that we're seeing in the Government of Canada. More and more press releases, speeches are all, by cabinet ministers, are all offering email, Twitter, follow us, Facebook opportunities as well. And I think that we need to think about how we can embrace some of that opportunity in terms of bundling our services. And one example, and again, I think some of you in this room have experience in this. As we're translating speeches and press releases, it's very little effort for us to add some value in terms of offering support in terms of Twitter feeds and key messages in terms of social media. And again, I think that that's some of the value added that perhaps may allow us to break into new markets and offer some value added services. And those of you who have the capability in other languages, again, there may be some opportunities there in the future. Transformation. Transformation, technology. We are continuing to work very hard in terms of looking at technology. And I'll come to that in a moment. The procurement reform is really what I wanted to discuss today. We're looking very closely at the way we've traditionally offered our contracts, and we're looking very much in terms of how we can work with you in terms of providing a more focused approach, more predictability in the way we're doing contracting. I'm very pleased at the table in the middle of the room to have the Translation Bureau team, but a number of my colleagues, Denise Langlois, if you can wave, and Valentina, if you can yeah, you waved. Valentina and Denise and Ann Nichols are part of a procurement reform team where we're looking very critically in terms of how many contracts we're issuing, what are some of the opportunities in terms of perhaps making the contracting process more streamlined and easier to use. I'll come back in terms of some of the specifics that we are looking at in terms of our contracting reform. Integrity and security, I wanted to flag an initiative that started with Public Works Government Services and what we're going to be seeing more of across government. We're under more and more pressure to ensure that the work that we are doing adheres to certain security and reliability standards, and we're asking the same of our suppliers, not just in the linguistic services, but clearly in terms of many commodities and services that are being offered to the Government of Canada. We are providing information on our website in terms of how future business can be conducted with the Government of Canada and what some of these clauses mean in terms of ensuring reliability. Quality is key concern, and I want to be very careful when I say here that we are looking at quality. We've always been concerned for quality. I know that certainly the associations, universities, we're all preoccupied. What does the race to the lowest cent per word mean? Will we be compromising our standards? Will we be compromising our quality? La sécurité de tous ces, la qualité de travail, c'est très important pour tout le monde. Et pour nous autres au Bureau de la traduction, il faut qu'on continue notre effort de s'assurer la qualité. In 2008, the Bureau and the industry adopted the National Standard for Translation Services with the major goal of improving and ensuring quality. The fact that it was brought forward and adopted so quickly is a testament to the relevance and the importance of quality. We'll talk a little bit later on this morning at the round tables in terms of what that actually means. But as we start exploring other means of communications and social media, what does that hold for us in terms of quality? As we start introducing language ecosystems and different aspects of technology, will quality be stretched? Will quality be compromised? And what do we have to do as a community to ensure that quality is ascertained in the appropriate way? I want to talk a little bit about the work that we're doing in interpretation, and I think we've had some really incredibly powerful successes with the industry and with universities in terms of how we conduct our work on the interpretation side. Parliamentary Interpretation Unit, we have basically a workflow where we have 70% of our staff members in-house doing the interpretation with 30% freelance interpreters. Our visual interpretation, currently 100% of the visual interpretation services are delivered by Bureau-accredited American Sign Language, Langue des Signes Québécois freelance interpreters. We're not looking to create in-house capacity. We really have had incredible success working with a very robust industry, and we want to continue to ensure that that industry remains viable and that we are bringing in new recruits and that we have the ability to work collaboratively. This year, the Bureau accredited 39 American Sign Language interpreters, and next year a similar accreditation process will be conducted for the LSQ interpreters. On our conference interpretation side, 35% of the services are offered in-house, 65% outside to freelance translators. That will continue. We're still continuing to look for qualified translators, qualified interpreters, particularly in languages such as Greek, Turkish, Hungarian, Urdu, and Thai. And again, this is where we're looking very closely to partnerships, not only with the associations, with universities, and as well as perhaps our colleagues in the European community, as well as with United Nations. And the Bureau is making every effort to make sure that we have a regular, reliable supply of Canadian official languages interpreters, as well as language of the Americas, English, French, Spanish, and Portuguese, and languages in the United Nations. We're starting to see more and more requirements as we do interpretation for trade delegations for our interpreters to have secret and top secret clearances. We know that part of our procurement reform has to be the ease and the speed in which we can ensure not only our interpreters but our translators also, and our freelance translators, have access to the appropriate security clearances and validations. Terminology, we are continuing our focus on terminology, and again, we're very pleased to be able to say that the language portal has showcased to Canadians and to the world the importance of Termium and the robustness and the quality of the terminology database. We're putting a great deal of focus in the future and making sure that that database is robust and that continues to provide the support in terms of the language portal. We're having discussions as well to say what more can we do in terms of perhaps expanding our database. We are looking very collaboratively in terms of work with the European community in terms of how we can share in terms of other languages, but our focus is remaining in terms of English and French.